Hey guys, and welcome to lesson 3. Today we're going to be starting our actual website. Finally, some of you might be thinking. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be creating a 2-page website. I've already deleted these and recreated them just as we did normally. We're going to create the second page next episode because I think we'll be strapped for time this episode. So, let's get straight into it. To start, we're going to have to do our basic HTML5 layout. So I'm going to use Emmet, which is a plugin for Sublime Text, which allows me to expand that kind of stuff out really quickly. You guys will just have to write it out unless you use Emmet yourself. Chances are you don't. No big deal. It really doesn't affect this. We're going to just give this a class of we're going to give this a title of my website. In the body, we're going to have a header, which is then going to be followed by a site title, which is basically just what you want the user to see. I'm just going to give this site name because we don't really have a name for this in particular. We're going to have then a nav with a UL, and we're going to have an LI containing an A, and we're going to have 3 of these. We're going to have 4. Let's have 4. We're going to have this as home. We're going to have this as about. We're going to have this as help, and this as contact us. So those are our links, right? All of them have hash because they're not actually going anywhere at the moment. We're going to give this one a class of active. And this is because this is the page we are on right now. So we want this to be the active one. And we're going to style this so that it actually looks different later. So now we've done our nav. Pretty easy, right? Now we're going to go div. And we're going to name this div. And we're going to give it an ID of wrapper and a class of clearfix. Now the wrapper here is what we're going to use, and we're also going to use the clearfix in our CSS. The clearfix fixes issues that when you float things around, and I'm going to get into that when we start floating things, but bear that in mind that clearfix is a class that we haven't created yet. We're then going to do a div with a class of container, and in here we're going to put our main. So now this is where our main content is. We're going to do this an H2. I'm going to give it heading, followed by a p tag with some lorem ipsum. So I've discussed lorem ipsum before. Outside of the main tag, we're going to create another div, and this one is going to be called second. We're going to give this an article tag, which is a semantic tag. I mean, it doesn't actually really do anything other than make it easy to understand what's happening for the reader of your code. I'm going to give this article as the header, followed by lorem. That's 25 because it's a little article. I'm going to copy and paste this just for the sake of simplicity, just to show you how we can have multiple. After this, just outside of the wrapper, I'm going to make a footer. Whoops. And in there, I'm going to give it small text, and I'm going to go something goes here. So that's where you might put a copyright notice or whatever it is that you want that needs to be small and in the footer of the document. And if we open this in our browser, you're going to see it looks pretty awful. We're going to make this look a lot nicer now using CSS. So first things first, we want to open up our body tag and set it like a font or a background. So I'm going to set the background first, and I'm going to set it to a light grey. I'm also going to set the font size to 16 pixels. I'm going to set the font family, and this is a bit complicated to spell. It's Trebuchet. Trebuchet? I have no idea how you say that. And it's going to be sans serif fonts. And I'm also going to give the body a margin of 0. We'll discuss this in another episode to make sure that it's up against the edges, so there is no margin. We're then going to give the A tag a color of crimson. So any A tag on the site is going to have this color scheme. And it's also going to have no underline or anything like that. We're going to have it so that when you hover over this, it changes the color only slightly to red. In the page structure part of things, we are going to do a header, a container, and our footer. So we're going to target all 3 of these. We're going to target our header, which is our navigation. We're going to target our wrapper and we're going to target our footer to all be in the same place. So we're going to give this margin 0 auto, so it's centered on the page. We're going to give it padding 0. We're also going to give it a width of 88% and a maximum width of 1060 pixels. 1060 pixels, sorry. If we refresh, nothing's going to happen. I'm going to give this, so we've given it a max width, and now we're going to go in and we're going to link our CSS to assist style CSS. Reload, bam, look at that. Looks a lot better already, right? Now we're going to target our wrapper, and we're going to give this a width of 100% so that it spans out to the width of the container. We're then also going to give this a white background, and we're going to give it padding of 1 EM top and bottom and 0 left and right. We don't need to give this padding because there's already a reasonable amount of space either side anyway. We're then going to start working on our navigation. So we're going to target the nav UL. We're going to give it list style none. And what this will do is it will get rid of the dots here. We are then going to give it padding 0, which will get rid of that gap that we saw there. We're now going to target the LIs in the UL, and we're going to float these to the left. As a matter of fact, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to give it inline block, and we're going to give these a margin right of 5 pixels. Spread them out a little bit. Now you see they're all in line. Great, right? Looking really good. Now, next, we are going to target the A tag in the LI that we created. And we don't even need to do that, really. We just need to give it a background color. CCC, which is like another type of gray. We're going to give it padding of 5 pixels top and bottom and 15 pixels left and right. We're also going to give it a border radius, and the border radius is going to be 15 pixels in the top left, 0 in the top right, 15 pixels in the bottom left, and 0 in the bottom right. Now we're going to target the LI A tags if they're being hovered, or, and remember when we did the class of active on the other tag, we're going to target that now. I'm going to give it a background color of crimson, color white, and again we're going to give it a border radius, but this time it's going to be 0, 15 pixels, 0, 15 pixels. Now if we reload, look at that. It's coming along really nicely. Next step is to do our main body. So I'm going to target the main, and I'm going to give it a width of 72%. I'm also going to float this to the left. Now the reason we're floating it to the left, rather than giving a display inline block, is because we want this, as you can see here, we want this to be on the right hand side of the page, right? The only way we can do that easily is to get this to the left and get this to the right. As long as there is no margin here, this will automatically come up from behind and it will go boop up to the top. But how do we do that? If we want to get the main tag here to be just 72% without a margin to the right here like it should be, we need to float it. If we get rid of the float, see, it's still 72%, but there's that orange there, which indicates that that space cannot be taken up by anything else on the page. Floating it to the left pops it out of the page, and the rest of the page thinks, oh, it's not there anymore. But it still doesn't go underneath it, but it won't have that margin to the right anymore. So it's basically taken out of the flow of the page. We are then going to target the thing that's coming to the left, and we're going to second, I believe that's what we called it. I'm going to target this, and we're going to give this a width of 24%. We are also going to float this one to the right, so that it doesn't go underneath, because right now you see that some of the article is actually underneath here. We have to make sure it's always over that side, no matter what. Even if there's no content here, it cannot be over there. We're also going to give this a padding of 8 pixels, which is half EM. And we're going to give it a margin on the bottom of 10 pixels, just to spread them out a little bit. We're going to target now the articles that we put in there. And this is very simple. I'm just going to give it a border. This is something we haven't done before. The border, we're going to give it how many pixels wide we want it. So 1 pixel, quite small. We're going to tell you what we could have dotted, we could have solid, we could have dashed, little styles of how we actually want the border, and then the color. And then we're going to do border radius, and we're going to tell it, well, we want it to be radius to 5 pixels. It means that basically the corners of the border will be rounded off by 5 pixels. And we're going to give it a 8 pixel padding with another margin bottom of 10 pixels. Now when we reload, see there's our 5 little pixel border radius, and there's our dotted border. Now you see what has happened here. Why is the white all the way up there? Well, this is the reason that we did the clear fix. We did the clear fix here. The clear fix is basically a fix which is clear, I guess. It fixes the issues with floats, basically, and floats no longer being in the flow of the page. This code is not my own. It is more or less all over the internet and is very popular. There are different variants of it, but I didn't create this code, and it is more or less kind of like a hack, but it's how it's supposed to be used, if that makes any sense. It's not like we're breaking the rules of CSS using this, but what it'll do now is that the white will span across the whole thing. The reason though that we use the after is because if we didn't do the after, see that everything is gone now, because everything we gave the clear fix to has been hidden. So we have to make sure we use the after, because we don't want it to target what we've targeted. We don't want it to set visibility hidden to the whole wrapper. We want it to say, okay, after the wrapper's finished, so more or less here, we want it to do things to make it so that this is still part of the page, because it's floated, but the clear fix makes the browser realize that just because it's floated, we're still going to bring this to the same size. So it more or less surrounds the floated elements even though they are floated, just by using clear fix. Very ingenious, really, really cool. As you can see there's that clear fix after, and there's the stuff we put in there. If we were to somehow get rid of this, I don't even know how to do. I don't actually think you can do that like you can with these. No, you cannot. Very, very simple. This concludes today's episode. This concludes today's lesson. Before I go, I'm going to go over what we've done. So we've created our basic HTML structure with the HTML tags, and in the head we are setting the title to my website, as you can see here. We are also linking to the style sheet, which is over here. And then in the body, we're creating the header, which is where we're going to put our actual name of our site, followed by the navigation. We've also made a div with a wrapper, and the wrapper is the white bit that we see on page, which is why it's a wrapper, and it's why we don't have anything there, because it allows us to distinguish the navigation and the footer from the actual main part of the content. We've given this class of clearfix to fix the issues that occur when we use floated elements, and inside we've given it a div of a container. We have then put in our main tag, which is where the left side column is, and then over here we have a div with an ID of second, which is where our right column is. We could give this an A side, which is basically a sidebar, and then in here, rather than targeting second, we just do A side, and it will still work. Up to you. And here we have two articles, both of which have a header of article and some basic placeholder text. In the style sheet, we've set the body to a background of grey and given it some font adjustments. And we've also got rid of the margin, so that if we were to get rid of this margin, you'll see that everything pops out from the side of the browser. You can see there's a bit of a margin there. You can see this grey here. This is why we give it margin 0. Just to the left and right there, you'll see it disappear. We've also starred the A tag with the color of crimson. We haven't actually got any A tags other than these ones, so if we go into the footer and just give it a real quick A tag, test, forgot to put the hash. See, that's what our A tags look like. In the style sheet, we've also added the hover, which changes the color to red. We could, if you wanted to, just give it a quick underline, so that when you hover over it, it underlines itself like that. We've targeted the header, the container, and the footer, and centered it on the page. We've centered the padding to 0, and we've set the width to 88%, but we've limited that amount of width to 100. But we've limited that width to 1060, so that it doesn't get too big. We've targeted the wrapper and set the width to 100%, and also the color of the background to white, and we've given it a padding on the top and bottom, just because you don't need it left and right, because there's already a lot of space left over here. We've targeted the UL in our navigation, and we've gotten rid of the bullet points and the extra spacing added by the unordered list. We've then targeted the list items in there and given it display inline blocks so that they bunch up next to each other, and we've given it margin right so that they're not super close together. We've targeted these A tags in there and given them a different kind of background color, and added a little bit of padding and a little bit of a border radius to give it that nice shape. We've then said that when you hover over it, or if it's the current page, we want it to be a different color. We are going to give this a text decoration of none now, because as you saw there, when you hover over it, it gets an underline. We don't want that, so we're going to give it text decoration of none. And there's our border radius just swapping over from 15.0 to 0.15. We've then targeted our main and given it width of 72%. The reason it's not 70 is because if we set this to 30 and this is 70, the padding isn't accounted for when we use widths, which means that that extra little bit of padding will actually cause them to overlap. As a matter of fact, I'll show you right now. So if we set 70-30, that makes 100%, right? No. We have padding, and that padding is 8 pixels either side, so 16 pixels in total, not accounted for by this width. So we just make it a little bit less than normal, 72%, so it's a little bit, because the main needs to be big, but we dramatically reduce the size of the A side. We've floated this to the left so that it doesn't have a margin to the right of it, so that things can bunch up to the right, and we've floated it over to the left so it sticks to the left hand side of the wrapper. We've then given the A side a width of 24% so that it's not quite as big, and floated it to the right so that it sticks to the right hand side but doesn't have a margin to the left. So rather, there's no margin here, so if we go back, there's no margin here, there's no margin here, it's nothing. We've also targeted the actual articles in there, given them a border and a little bit of a border radius to round them off. We've then added some padding, and we've also set a margin to the bottom of them of 10 pixels, so they're not super close together. This clear fix, like I said, fixes the issues with floats, and that is the basic site that we've got here. I hope you guys enjoyed this lesson and found it helpful. If you did, leave me a like and subscribe to make sure that you don't miss any other lessons. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.